Hello. How about that? Bob Chitester, everyone.
Good morning.
What an incredible journey you've been on with freedom as your beacon, as your guide. Freedom has obviously become a four-letter word on both sides. It has become an inflection point. And you can actually start some good arguments just by talking about freedom, which, you know, we in this comfortable room sort of take for granted as the thing we aspire to most. What's the best way, do you think, to engage people about freedom? Is it through argument?
No, I don't think so. And in fact, I think Jonathan Haidt in his work has pointed out given us some guidance. And in fact, I'm very excited because I think his research kind of confirms what I've always thought, which is you have to tell stories. You have to get people to understand, how does freedom relate to them? When they go to the grocery store, they have something that clicks that says, oh, yeah, well, if the government weren't, then I'd have more choices when I go in there. It's things, just little things like that.
But there are people like Bernie Sanders who walks into a grocery store and sees too many sticks of deodorant and says that we have too much freedom. How do you counter an argument like that that has actually gotten some traction with the progressive left?
Well, it's interesting you raise that because I've titled this Supernovas for Freedom. Yeah. What I mean by that is we have to be very careful not to get into a comfort zone. Those of us who are the advocates who are out there trying to push the ideas, like anybody else, we're human beings and we get into a routine, we've developed something that's working, and we have a tendency then to sit back a bit. We're going through that in our organization where I'm challenging everybody, now that I'm leaving as CEO, so Robert Chatfield, who's our new CEO, will have to deal with all this. But I'm raising the challenge of saying we're maybe too comfortable. We're reaching now, according to an independent study, we're reaching 11 million students in schools. Well,
through Stossel in the classroom.
Well, and this is through isit.org and the materials we've developed since Stossel in the classroom. And Rob Shemens is carrying Stossel in his classroom, and we will be collaborating with them on that. But that number ought to go up. It ought to go up to 50, 60 million student impressions a year. And we need to get away from that comfort level.
Well, you talk about comfort zones, and the safe spaces that have been developed in higher education and academia are now extending to high school and middle school and even elementary school. And, you know, there's much more of an agenda, and the ideas of freedom, there's more pushback than there was. So how do you counter that agenda?
Well, take the Where Did My Money Go excerpt you saw. And the key point that the young lady made there was, what she was really saying was, she didn't understand that government doesn't have any money. And take just a simple statement like that. If we can develop enough material to pound away at students, the government doesn't have any money, and gets them the recognition that where's the government going to get the money? Out of my pocket when I start working, that we begin then to lay a foundation ground where the discussions that you have with people now start to make more sense to the average individual who doesn't understand maybe the basic economics and doesn't even think about it very much.
Yeah, but they certainly understand what freedom is.
Yes, if you put it in their terms. But of course we have the problem of freedom versus security, and that whole issue that people exploit. I recently came to a conclusion, thanks to a program we're doing, that I thought we should emphasize private charity as a solution to welfare. And I'm persuaded that that's something we should constantly push. But the real issue is that the government structured welfare is such that people don't have an opportunity to work. It's not that they don't want to work. They don't know how to get there, and then we tax them so hard that to leave welfare and take a job is going to cost them money. Well, no logical human being is likely to do that. Yeah. So let's change the system there, and people will go out and work.
It's obviously very difficult to change the system, as we hear from these exasperated lawmakers who have to fight the leadership within their own party. But having known and worked with Milton Friedman, what would he think of the political discourse and the climate right now?
I think Milton's final hope which was a little bit more optimistic than Tom Sowell. The last time I spoke with Tom, I asked him if he was still pessimistic, and he said yes, except on the days when I think it's hopeless. And Milton was more optimistic than that, but he also, I think, would have said the solution is to be ready for the crisis that is undeniable, that things get so bad that there is just a cry for a solution, and that we need to constantly work to have as many people as possible understanding what that solution is. And it's freedom, trusting yourself, trusting your neighbor to take care of themselves. I think that's at the core of it. I'd add one other thing. I used to wear Adam Smith ties. Mm-hmm. You notice this?
Which I hear are made in China.
Yes, right. And I haven't worn an Adam Smith tie now in probably 15 years. My wife and I are raising a granddaughter, so I got into Winnie the Pooh again. And I now have about 20 Winnie the Pooh ties, which I wear all the time.
Yes.
Now why?
Yes. I
am purposely signaling people, now I may be defrauding them, I'm signaling them that I'm a nice person. Oh. That I have some interests that they may say, well, gee, if he likes Winnie the Pooh, he must be okay. Maybe I'll listen to him. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind. People are not going to trust us. They're not going to listen if they don't think our intentions are good.
That's very true, and that signaling is very important. There's another Swedish economist that was highlighted in the video, that's Johan Norberg, and he takes an optimistic view of freedom and an optimistic view of human nature, which I think is implicit in the search for liberty and those who embrace it. But I have a question for you about healthcare in this country. I hold the optimistic view that I agree we are in a state of crisis, and we are going to go one of two ways. We are either going to go much more, the pendulum will swing toward the free market, or we will go into a single payer system. Do you think it's blindly optimistic to the point of being insane to think that healthcare could actually be on a free market path in this moment of crisis?
No, I don't think so, but I think it's going to mean that we have to continue to push the fact that we are different. We don't want to be European, which is the single payer system. And the one way we're going to address that is we're working on a production right now with Norberg about Sweden, about what Sweden really is, not what Sanders projected it to be.
The idealization people like Bernie Sanders project onto Sweden and other Scandinavian
which is totally wrong. And that program we're hoping to get on public television, and I think we will succeed in September and October of 2018 to help at that critical time in our election cycle.
All right, well, Bob Chitester, thank you so much for the incredible work that you have done on behalf of Milton Friedman's message, his work, and the ultimate cause of freedom. It's been an incredible career, and thank you so much for sharing the stage here at Freedom Fest.
Thank you.
All right, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Freedom.